And now I'd like to introduce Richard Turner. Let me tell you a little bit about him. He's an amazing photographer, an award-winning photographer. He's done a collaborative book of his nature photography and his poetry, and it's titled, "I Can't Always See My Path, But I Keep On Walking." It was released to critical acclaim. Dr. Wayne Dyer, New York Times best-selling author, wrote, "The words and images touched me at my soul and called me to my own awakening as well." Wow. He was invited to share his book and speak at the Parliament of World Religions in Salt Lake City in October of 2015. Here's a fun quote from Richard. "I was a lawyer for over 40 years. Now I'm a poet, an author, and a nature photographer. I live with my soulmate and spiritual partner, Prem Turner. I'm very happy. The birds and flowers I photograph and write about don't call me disgusting names." His soul talk is called Eternal Energy, Searching for Soul. Please welcome to Sac Soul Talks, Richard Turner.
I told my wife I'd be back in a month. I put a coffee pot and a cooking pot and a sleeping bag in my car, and I drove east. I didn't know where I was going. I had no reservations. I had no agenda. I didn't know what I was going to do. I just drove east. Now, who in the world would do something that silly? What's this all about? For many mornings prior to driving east, I had awakened in a war zone. I was a trial lawyer for over 42 years. And every morning I woke up trying to figure out who I was going to beat up and who was going to beat me up. Picture this. You're in a courtroom. Everyone in the courtroom is well-dressed. I wear a tie. The lawyers are comfortable on their turf. They're wandering around, cracking jokes, having a great time. The clients, who probably haven't been in a courtroom before, and the witnesses that are about to be examined are not having a great time, I assure you. They're scared shitless. There's a hush, though, as the judge, black robe swirling, walks into the courtroom, and the lawyers are all saying, "Good morning, Your Honor. Good morning, Your Honor," trying to stay on his or her good side. And my job, the first opposition witness is being called, and my job is to destroy this human being if I can. I get turned on by the thoughts of attacking this person on cross-examination, which is the lawyer's sandbox. I'm paid to ruin this person's day. I'm paid to win. I wasn't paid to be a nice guy and lose. So I wasn't a nice guy. One morning I awoke and it was like, I don't know if you guys remember the Gong Show, but it was like being on the Gong Show, and I got yanked off the lawyer stage, and this deep voice said, I'll try to be a deep voice here, "Richard, aren't you tired of the conflict and the unhappiness and the fighting that defines your work life?" And spontaneously I said, I'd never heard this voice before. Spontaneously I said, "Yes, yes," to the voice. "What do I do?" And the voice said, "Go forth." So I drove east. Goodbye, California. I camped in the wilderness of Idaho. I'm sleeping on the ground in a deserted campground in the open. It's almost first light. The sun isn't up yet, but you could see things. I'm feeling something stepping on my sleeping bag. I'm feeling a presence. It's stepping on me because I'm inside the bag. You know, us veteran campers, we put the bag over our head so nothing could get us. We think that's going to protect us. So I peel the bag back a little bit and I look up and I'm stunned and shocked by what I see. What I see is this massive brown belly of fur just 2 feet above my head. Massive forelegs standing on my sleeping bag. A massive, huge head with great big antlers on it that could kill me in an instant. It's a bull moose, and he's sniffing me, this intruder on his turf. And I quickly put the bag back over my head to protect myself. Told the moose I'm sorry. He moved on after a couple of snorts, and I did my best not to pee. Well, after 2 weeks of meeting scary creatures, I have to say that after a week or so of being Davy Crockett, my bones were planning a protest. It was really nice. You go to bed every night with looking at the Milky Way up in the mountains, and it's bright, and the stars are shining, and it's wonderful. But by morning, my bones are tired, and they're hurting in a guy who's sweet 60. Not sweet 16, sweet 60. And the close encounter with the moose was the deciding factor. I left Idaho for Montana, where I got a job on a cattle ranch. Now, this was great. I was transported right back into my childhood because I got to ride a horse. I didn't know how to ride a horse. The cowboys there taught me how to do that. I got to buck hay, which was not a fun job. I got to learn how to back a trailer full of hay bales into a barn, and I got to tell tall tales with real cowboys. I had cowboy clothes, and I had this dirty, jaunty cowboy hat that I wore and was so proud of it. And this beautiful stream went right through the ranch, the West Fork of the Bitterroot River. And one morning, really early, it's not in my story, but I want to tell you about this anyway. I digress, okay? For payment, I got room and board at this ranch. And in the morning, we'd have these wonderful breakfasts cooked, and I would eat with all the cowboys. And one morning, we had warm rhubarb pie. Can you imagine this pie? Flaky crust, juicy rhubarb, homemade, warm, with a cup of Big Sky black coffee. I really thought I found my soul in rhubarb pie. So I'm back to the stream. I'm sitting by the stream. The meadow is stretching out in front of me. Mist is coming off the stream. And I hear this voice again. This time it's not loud. It's soft. And it says to me, Richard, there's a lot going on in the world. All you do is swagger around a courtroom, arguing with people. Don't let the miracles pass you by. And in that instant, I felt my soul. I felt Spirit talking to me, and I made the decision right then and there without any thought or thoughtfulness to quit my career as a lawyer. After the 30 days were over, not 40, 30, it's a joke. I came home and told my tolerant wife, Prem, that I quit my law practice. It took me a while to do that. I couldn't just walk out on clients for whom I'd performed a lot of work, but I was definite about quitting. And then I said to myself, now what? What do I do? Audacious, still searching. Well, I love the natural world, and I learned the natural world from my father, who used to pick me up when I was a little kid at 4 o'clock in the morning and carry me to our 38 Chevy and put me in the back seat and cover me with blankets and quilts. And I kept sleeping while he drove to the fishing destination. And it was either Sequoia or Yosemite or even Northern California. My dad, if you believe this or not, my dad surveyed the Redwood Highway up to the Oregon border in the 1920s. And the stories he used to tell of the fishing and the wildlife in the 1920s just got me going into the natural world. Well, on my 30-day trip, I had taken some photographs, and when I came home, I showed them to a guy named Ted Serlin, Some of you may remember Ted. Rest in peace, Ted. Beautiful guy and a world-class acclaimed portrait photographer. And he said, Richard, these pictures are terrible. He says, you've got little moose, big pond. What you want is little pond, big moose. Because later that day, the moose had posed for me in this pond. He's eating veggies off the bottom of the pond, raising up water coming off his rack, and the veggies coming out of his mouth. It was a nature photographer's dream shot. But Ted also said, he said, other than these wildflowers you took with black and white film, he said, some of your stuff is okay. It's pretty good. And I felt that recording an instant of natural history, and there's some people here who know about this, Tom and Wendy, recording an instant of natural history was a good thing to do. It was an honorable thing to do. And so I started on this new career with no formal education and no legitimate training of nature photography. Still searching. So then I began to experience flowers in a new light. And on the ranch, there was this little yellow daisy that I stopped, and I normally just walk by little yellow daisies. I mean, who cares? But for whatever reason, I was motivated to stop and look at this daisy. And it was yellow petals with Montana dew on them. And in the inside, it had these spiny things that went up into a crown like this, just like a king's crown or something. And on each spike was this red color that went from the bottom of the crown to the top. And then as I'm looking at this, right before my eyes, the interior of the flower turned a purple hue. Now, you guys believe that? Most people don't. But I'm telling you, on a stack, yeah, it turned a purple hue, and it changed my opinion of flowers. And from that time on, I stop, I glance, I look at the core of the flower. And in that daisy, in the core of that daisy, again, I found my soul. Well, maybe the story is embellished a little bit, but I can remember that daisy as well as I can remember what I did 5 minutes ago. And flowers, I started a romance with flowers. I started a romantic affair with flowers. And every flower I saw and photographed caused me to look at that beautiful specimen of natural history with awe and with peace and with serenity. And then I had the good fortune to go around the world and photograph flowers. It's all a business trip, guys. I went to Tahiti, India, Africa, Russia, Canada, all over the place to photograph flowers. And that was my goal in going to these places. And I came to believe through this process that I'm personally, biologically, spiritually connected with these flowers and with trees. Guys, no trees, no humans. And eventually to all animals, and I kind of got this view that I was part of this big living family that's been evolving over millennia, millions and millions of years, because we're all made of the same stuff. We really are. If you take me and take a tweezer and pick out each atom of my body and put it in an anonymous rectangle on the ground, and then take one of these trees out here and do the same thing and take each of their atoms, each one, put it down on the ground in an anonymous rectangle, you can't tell who's me and who's the tree, because we're made of the same principal elements of trees and plants and cockroaches. Still searching. And I also came to believe that I'm searching for the divine, and I really related to your dark night of the soul, because in my days of alcoholism, I had lots of those. And Spirit said to me, basically, if you've got this knowledge, if you're producing these beautiful pictures, maybe you ought to share it with somebody instead of just sequestering it and keeping it a secret. But here's my character defect. I feared rejection. People won't like me. People won't like my work. How can I possibly stand up in front of people and say, I am a nature photographer when all I'm is a retired lawyer. How can I do that? Well, there's many people that I know and respect who say, feel the fear and do it anyway. So I took the leap with the idea that I'm not going to make little plans. Little plans have no magic to stir men's blood. Spirit warned me about miracles that might happen to me in this search for soul. One is that I've been privileged, and I mean that, privileged to place hundreds of my images in hospitals in Northern California. Just recently, the new hospital in Marysville. And that's been a fantastic thing because people in hospitals are depressed, and they're frightened, and they're scared. And this gives them a little something that's cheery instead of being scared and frightened. One woman called me after seeing my picture of the Peace Rose, which you can see in the back there afterwards, at Mercy San Juan Hospital when she went to visit her dying husband every day. And she asked me if she could have a copy of that Peace Rose so she could remember her husband, who had died. And that was very, very touching. And I've had several incidents like that. Then Spirit ordered me to write this book and jump into the self-publishing world. I could do 3 hours on searching for my soul in the self-publishing world, and I'm not going to do that, except to say that among the hundreds who have written me, and hundreds of people have written me about my book, My Path, and again, well, I'll get into this in a moment. Christine S., who's suffering from a really, really difficult illness, wrote, "Your work made me instantly cry. I simply sat and enjoyed the overwhelming feeling in my heart that brought tears to my eyes. It was a glorious moment." Beth H., 11 years old, wrote, "This book tells me what God is all about." And J.G. talked about Wayne Dyer giving me an unsolicited endorsement that arrived in my mailbox one day. I'd never seen him, talked to him, spoken to him, asked him for anything. And I get this letter. And I told my wife, "Hey, honey, I got a letter from Wayne Dyer." And there's this personal note in there that, of course, I have used extensively because one of the things he said in his note was, use this however you like. And then I met him a couple of times after that, and we had very nice discussions. Now, are these brags? Yeah. They're brags. I'm bragging. I don't know how many of you know Howard Sellers before he died, but Howard was wonderful in saying to our group sessions where all us addicts would show up, has anybody got a brag? And so we would say, yeah, this happened, that happened, and it taught us that this is bits of evidence that our soul is okay, that our soul exists for good, that our path is worthy, that it's bearing some fruit. And for me, that I have something to offer the world other than arguing, and even it could be a gift from the divine. But no search is without challenges on the path, mine included. My oldest son, Rich, committed suicide in 2007. His soul journey took him to places we can't know, not yet. And I reacted to this tragedy and its aftermath, and the aftermath was terrible. Any of you who've experienced a suicide in your family know that the aftermath of the event can be very, very emotionally devastating. And for a short time, I gave up 10 years of sobriety. I medicated my sorrow and my deep, abiding, dark depression with my medicine. I'm not happy that I did, but it's part of my journey. And I eventually came to know that his decision to take his life was his journey, not mine. And that even the most difficult obstacles, like suicide in a family, can be overcome. In fact, they can be signposts for our search for soul. Life is difficult. And in our ordered world, things happen that shouldn't happen, like kids dying before their parents. And I had to relearn the concept of acceptance. Doesn't mean I can't be sad. It just means that my journey searching for soul isn't governed by events over which I have no control. And my Al-Anon girlfriends, They were all women. My AA friends, women and men, my loving wife, Prem, and Georgia Prescott from the Center for Spiritual Awareness put their arms around me, figuratively speaking, and embraced me through this process and got me through it. And the answer was always the same. We keep on walking, even when there's so much we don't know. So I'm going to cut this short because I'm going to go over my time and I don't want to. I just want to mention that life is precious. And the fact that microorganisms live in the ocean, that lived there millions and millions of years ago, and are made again of the same stuff that we are, and they are our ancestors. And we have an obligation to protect and preserve, as a result of this, all living beings. My oldest daughter, Erin, sees my son's soul in hawks. And whenever she's driving and she thinks about Rich, she sees a hawk flying in front of her car. I always thought this was, well, maybe made up a little bit. A week ago, my wife Prem and I are driving in our car, and we're talking about Rich, and this hawk flies right in front of our car, as if to say, here I am. Prem says there are no coincidences. So, is my search over as I stand before you today? I don't think so. I don't think the search is ever over, and I'm thankful for that. I give praise for this perfect day, and I'll always remember my brother Moose, who left me alone. The little yellow daisy that had the really, it happened, purple magic hue, and the face of the divine that I see in each of you. And I'll always treasure the memory of warm rhubarb pie. Where is my soul? The soul is the invisible me, trying to be better in each life that I'm allowed to live. So quickly, here's a poem that I wrote for my soul. When I die, my soul will wander, looking for a place to land, to be there, in spirit, unseen, but there, to continue the search for rightness, for forgiveness, for beauty and love. What more could I wish for my soul? I think I'll keep on walking. I think I'll keep on searching. Thanks to you for joining me.